Welcome into the Autzen Audibles Podcast. Matt Preem, Eric Scopel, Jared back on this edition of the pod. Game predictions, game preview. We're going to make some score predictions. We're going to get you caught up on everything that happened this week at Oregon football and get you ready for Saturday evening's 5 p.m. kickoff. I should say technically 5:12 p.m. kickoff. It's a really random time on the Pac-12 Networks. Ted Robinson, Yogi Roth, the Pac-12 Network's top crew will be in town. Maybe the only time that they're in town. Maybe the only time that you'll get to hear Yogi Roth and Ted Robinson call a Pac-12 game, because the Pac-12 Networks could be gone next year. We don't know. Oregon certainly won't be on it. Let's dive right into availability, injuries, and maybe the biggest name that people are talking about, continue to talk about, despite some stuff we've reported on duckterritory.com for weeks now, and that's the status, the availability of Chris Hudson. Eric, why don't you lay out everything that we know? And, we're not going to sit here and throw out some thoughts and, hypothesize what's going on and make it factual. This is just everything that we know. That's all factual.
Yeah, I think we wanted to open with this just because we've seen so many questions, both in the comments on the last show and on our message board and on social media. Chris Hudson's been at every practice all fall, and he's looked perfectly healthy every practice. Jared can attest. He's watched him return punts. He looks like he's moving fine, doesn't he, Jared? I don't think there's been any sign of anything.
Sure does. He sure does. He looks just fine.
So he's been around. It's not like he's not been at practice. This does not appear to be an injury. If it is an injury, it's something that we haven't been able to identify. And then he just hasn't been identified at either game. He was not at Lubbock, as far as we could tell. I don't think we saw him on the sideline against Portland State. You can correct me if I'm wrong there, Jared. I know we saw some people after warm-ups.
Yeah, I think I saw him on the field at Portland, not on the field, but on the sideline at Portland State, like with the wide receivers. I'm not 100%.
Yeah.
No, not warming up, not in jersey, just in street clothes. I'm not 100% confident about it, but after rewatching like the game itself, I thought I saw him on the sideline celebrating with, I think it was Troy Franklin.
So regardless, he hasn't warmed up for either game with the team. So that's really what we have. This is a guy who was Oregon's second leading receiver last year. He returned. He's been at every practice. He looks like he's doing just fine when he's out there. And yet he's not warming up with the team before games and didn't appear to make the trip to Lubbock at all. So read into that as you will.
Dan doesn't talk about injuries. He's not going to talk about guys. Yeah, if he doesn't play, or if for some reason Noah Whittington was to not play against Hawaii, we would not get an answer for that, most likely. Dan refuses to talk about it. So we've asked Dan about Chris. We have just gotten a response of paraphrasing. I'm talking about the guys that played. And until the status changes, he's going through practice, and he seems to be engaged in practice. The body language doesn't look as if he's pouting when we see him.
No.
He's engaged. So it's until we know more, that's where he's at. We're not going to sit here and dive into the rumor mill, because look, he may be gone at the end of the year. He may be gone. He may still play 2 more years at Oregon football. We don't know that answer. And so we're not going to suggest what happens moving forward. Now, other guys, this was a good week for some guys to getting back on the field, and maybe some guys are trending in the right direction. Maybe we don't see them this week, but we could potentially maybe see them in a week or two down the road.
Wednesday was a good day. Wednesday, we saw Justin Jacobs walk into practice after we didn't see him on Tuesday. On Wednesday, he was wearing cleats, which was Jared is better than I am on cleats/trainer watch. Had we seen Justin in cleats much at all in fall? If we had, it'd been a little bit.
In fall, no, other than the time that he was holding cleats as he made his way into practice. And then I believe switched into them. But coming from the locker room to practice in cleats, I don't believe we have seen in fall camp this year.
So that's an encouraging sign. To Matt's point, I wouldn't anticipate necessarily he plays. Maybe they want to get him a little bit of run. But considering this is a guy who seemingly hadn't been a full participant for weeks and 6 weeks probably, we'll see. Nishad Strother, back at practice. He's now been at the last two we've seen, still in trainers both times. Same kind of a deal there where I would be surprised if he's available this weekend, but you're certainly feeling encouraged by the fact that he is around. I didn't pick up on this live, but Tavita Palme, we had a photo of him entering, I think.
Oh yeah, he's back.
So he's back. And that's
in cleats nonetheless.
That's a guy who had not been around since right around the same time as when Tatum Tuioti went down. I think that was right after the first scrimmage of fall. So well over a month now. True freshman. That part's encouraging. So starting to get some of the guys back. I guess we should note that Matt Rigney, like the third string punter, was not at the last two practices. And Dan clarified with us on Wednesday, he has no longer with the team. So that's basically the injury report, unless Jared can think of anything else that's a hot button topic.
I mean, the only other hot button topic is Jurion Dickey's brother being at practice. There's literally nothing to make of that. Like, I don't even think
we have a number
jersey number yet. No, I don't think so.
Is he? I don't even think he's on the roster officially yet.
I don't think he's on the roster. Like,
I'll check right now.
It was something that Jurion had mentioned when he was committing to Oregon, like literally on his commitment stream on Instagram. But this is the first time we've seen him. We've seen him this week. He doesn't have a jersey number. He's a big guy. So he's a defensive lineman, an interior defensive lineman. That's the only other notable thing, I guess. But because, and that's a good thing, because Oregon, like all the guys that have been maybe dinged up, like as Dan says, or maybe actually injured, like they're all progressing and coming back to practice. I think the only guy that has missed a lot of time recently is Lipe Moala, and we're unsure about that. He had missed most of fall camp, and then we saw him for 1 or 2 practices, and now he's back missing. That could just be due to an injury, like he came back and then maybe re-aggravated something and is now missing time. Again, I'm not sure. Go ahead.
Andrew Boyle is the other name I wanted to toss out.
Andrew Boyle is the other guy. Yeah, the backup kicker, place kicker, maybe a punter. I don't know, but I just think it's good news overall because Oregon's roster is turning healthier. You saw a lot. I mean, in the last couple of seasons with Oregon, they've missed out on guys preseason, and there's been preseason injuries. I don't know, the linebacker year from hell. There were 3 or 4 major injuries, season-ending injuries that all happened within the first either fall camp or the first 2 weeks of the season with Flo, Drew Mathis, Jackson LeDuc. I want to say there was one more just because of all those. I know those are names you haven't thought of in a while.
Yeah,
but
Drew Mathis was at the opener.
Oh, interesting. Go Drew. Isn't he a statey? Is he a statey in Oregon?
Yes, he is a police officer, I think, in the Salem area. I saw him hanging around Noah Sewell, who was at that game.
Nice. Noah Sewell was not one of the guys who had a season-ending injury that year.
No.
But it seemed like everybody else in that linebacker room did. And this year, Oregon has, knock on wood here, has been, rather fortunate in terms of these preseason or early season injuries. So to see the team coming back healthy as the Pac-12 season is about to begin in week 4, I think those are all really good signs. Other than Rigney leaving, I'm kind of sad about that.
Yeah, that was one of the all-time interviews, and as we were joking at Media Day yesterday, that we got to speak to him, but we hadn't spoken with Ope for 4 years, and someone was here for 6 months, and we got to speak to him, and Ope, we finally were able to speak with him.
He was there 3 months. At most.
Rigney's been here for 8 weeks, 9 weeks.
Yeah, that's true.
He only enrolled for fall term, so I guess at the beginning of or end of July, basically.
That's correct. All right, let's turn the table to this Hawaii game. 38 points last time I looked early this morning, I believe. It's a big number. It would be a pretty surprising outcome, I think, if this is a game going into the fourth quarter. It's close, and close mean 2 scores. But there's also still some tests here for Oregon. They're gonna see a team that likes to chuck the ball. They've got a quarterback. Eric's talked about him a couple times here on the podcast. Just strong-armed, And I'm also kind of just curious to see how this team comes out after an emotional, tough game week 2 against Texas Tech. They've got Colorado next weekend. That game against Colorado is going to be bonkers, and the attention that's going to be on that game is going to be bonkers. And so you kind of wonder, like, how clean is Oregon going to play? I don't think this is going to be a game where Oregon loses. That would be one of the ultimate shockers in a long time. But this could be one where you maybe see the offense play a little sluggish to start the first half, or maybe the defense plays a little sloppy. We see these self-inflicted penalties pop up. Those are the things I think I'll be really curious to watch, is just the execution, the level of focus that we're going to see from this team. Do they come out and just put this game to bed real quick, or does this game get prolonged a little bit more than it should against an opponent who's probably inferior at every position?
There shouldn't be false start problems.
No.
Let's just be honest. Like that, if that continues to be a problem, it becomes even more concerning. Those are not issues typically at home. Those are typically not issues, against Hawaii, who I'm not as familiar with that they're doing as much stemming as what Texas Tech did, which was that pre-snap movement on their defensive line. Excuse me. So that shouldn't continue to be a problem, and that's been the talk all week. We mentioned on our Tuesday pod just how impressed we were with how Josh Connerly Jr. took responsibility for that. If that continues to be a problem, like that's very concerning. Like a player of his caliber certainly, is not anywhere near as valuable as he should be if he's committing 3 false starts a week. And I don't think we anticipate that's the case. So that part I expect will be cleaned up. We should be honest, like Oregon at home, I know it's Portland State, has their offenses look fantastic. I mean, about as well as you could expect so far. And I mean, first 9 drives with Bo Nix at quarterback was, or I think all 9 of his drives in the opener were touchdowns. So, I mean, I don't think that's what's going to be the case this weekend, but I would expect the offense to look really good. And this Hawaii defense, we should note, and this news broke after we recorded our podcast with Jackson Moore, one of the guys that we'd highlighted all week, Logan Taylor, their leading tackler, is now out for the season. That's their inside linebacker. He finished last year with like 70 tackles in their last 6 games and opened with 21 tackles in their first 3 this year. So this is a guy who was very productive. And as they kind of represented in the story that they wrote, kind of the heart and soul, the leader of that defense, that's not insignificant. So I expect Oregon's offense to be very good. And if it's not, there's some concerns. Now, that doesn't mean there won't be negative plays. Hawaii is very aggressive. They will throw a lot at you. They play really hard. That was kind of what was said by several offensive players, is just the effort that you see from Hawaii, that they play all the way through the snap, that this team, these guys play with high motors. So I don't expect it to be a situation where Oregon just wins every single down like they did against Portland State, where at one point they were averaging like 13 yards per play. But I do think they'll have a lot of success. And I'm still like, the big thing for me is defensively. Like, this is where I'll be watching most, and it's probably not surprising at all, but it's twofold. Oregon should be able to get to the quarterback. They should be able to get sacks, and you hope that they're able to hold up downfield. We talked about a lot on our Tuesday show about Hawaii, how they're going to try to challenge Oregon defensively, especially vertically. Like, that's the big test this weekend. How do they hold up there?
Right.
Because going forward down the rest of the season, the week after that, you play Colorado. They're not afraid to throw the ball vertically. Stanford's more prone to throw the ball vertically than you've seen in a long time, which is interesting. And then certainly they play Washington, and Washington State out of that bye. Like, they're the first 4 conference teams they play will challenge you throwing the football. And so you want to see this defense hold up. You want to see them eliminate pass interference penalties. That was something that was a big talking point this week. Not to panic when the ball is in the air. So those are the things I'm kind of looking at. Is the offense? They should not be making those same false starts. Those like pre-snap stuff shouldn't be a problem at home, period. And then defensively, can you avoid making the mistakes? Can you avoid getting beat deep? Because Braden Shager, we've talked about, strong arm. Pofele Ashlock and Stephen McBride are receivers on the outside that have proven against Power 5 competition. I know it's Stanford. I know it's Vanderbilt to win battles. So those are the things I'm kind of keyed in on right now.
Yeah, I'm keyed in on similar things on the defense. I think that's the obvious point heading into this week, is just how is Oregon's secondary going to perform against a better offense than Portland State. And I know we've been saying that for the last 2 weeks, but that's that's it. That's what is the biggest concern. Like, the defensive line did their job against Texas Tech. I thought they had a great day at the office. You can see how talented all those individuals are. I mean, from Brandon Dorlus, Jordan Birch to Popo to Keon Ware Hudson, like all these guys at one point during that game had a moment, and I'm not even, including like Mateo Uyunglele, who had many moments against Texas Tech. Like, I haven't been concerned about the defensive line all offseason, but it's the secondary that is the biggest question. And Hawaii, like Eric just went through, is going to give them a tough test. Probably, I don't know if it's going to be tougher than Tech, just because the talent level that Tech has is significantly better than the talent level that Hawaii has, but the play styles are different. It's the air raid offense for Tech, which is probably a lot more short hitters into the flats, 4 to 8 yard gains at a time, hoping for yards after catch. Well, Hawaii is a traditional run and shoot where, there's going to be moments where they go for something in the flat, some quick hitter, some 3 to 6 yard route. But like we went through on the preview podcast on Tuesday, like 20% of their throws are 20 yards down the field. Like they're going to air it out. And Bennett Williams, I talked to him after practice on Wednesday. He was like, we know that they're going to try to move the ball through the air. Like that's just what's going to happen. But this defense appears ready for it. I'm excited to see how they perform against it, just because this is the question that we've all been asking all year long, all off season. It's like, all right, so are they going to be able to defend the deep ball? Like, are they going to be able to defend a high profile passing attack? Like, this is going to be another opportunity to do it. Offensively, I am interested in seeing how the offensive line performs, not just for pre-snap penalties, but there were moments against Tech where probably didn't live up to the expectations that some of us had. Maybe my expectations were too high on this line considering it was week 2, but I thought they would be able to run against Tech and their 3-3-5. But credit to Texas Tech. I thought their defensive line had a great day. I thought that they really pressured Oregon's offensive line when they were pulling. They just jumped through the lanes. I thought that they did a good job trying to set edges around Connerly and Johnny Cornelius, and whatever tight end was blocking. But I think Oregon's offensive line should perform much better against Hawaii, just in terms of the talent that they're going against. I'd like to see, big gash plays on the ground for Irving or Whittington or whoever's back there. I think that's it. I'm just past secondary, more offensive line stuff. I'm not really too worried about anything else on offense, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, the run game is a good one, Jared. I'm glad that you brought that up because they struggled at times against Tech. Real quick before we go to break, just what first half over under for Oregon? They're a 38.5 point favorite right now. Do we feel like 21, 24.5, 20, 28? Is it going to be higher than that? How are you expecting at halftime?
Hello, are we here?
Hello? Oh, we are here. I can't hear anything.
Eric is. Eric, you're moving, but I can't hear you. Sorry, everybody, for the delay. It looked like Eric was getting ready to talk, but we can't hear them. Nope. Your mouth is moving, but we can't hear you. Matt, you also cut out during your question, so can you re-ask the question? Sorry, everybody, for this wonderful podcasting. Yes, it was a tough time at the office.
Okay, I was going to say, what are we feeling at halftime for the over-under for Oregon? It's 38.5 in the game for the full game. Mm-hmm. Do we feel like up 21, up 24, up 28? What's the number at that we'd feel comfortable for a halftime margin here?
Oh no, Eric is back. No. We still can't hear him. No.
We're gonna try a new feature part of the podcast. I'm gonna press pause and we'll be back. All right, we're back. Technical difficulties. Not the commercial break, but okay, real quick. Over under 27.5 points at halftime for Oregon.
Hello, you can hear me now?
Yes,
we can hear you
Verizon.
Now. Yes.
I mean, I think for me, I would That's a good line, by the way, because that's quite a few points. But I will also say, with the way Oregon's offense looked in the opener, barring them turning the ball over, something they have not done this year, I think 28 points is very, very attainable. Now, we'll see. I think it would be disappointing if they come out of that first half and it's like 27-14 or something like that.
Yes.
And I don't even I would be surprised if Hawaii has that much early success. But as we said, that's an offense that will test you deep, and maybe they connect on a couple, and Oregon fans continue to mumble about how they want to change defensive coordinators 3 games into a season where they haven't lost yet.
I'd be really disappointed if it was like 21-3 at halftime or 24-3 at halftime.
Would we?
I just think they should be putting up. I don't know. I think there's going to be there should be a lot of points by this Oregon offense. Hawaii's defense is not good.
Yeah. No, I get that. 24-3 sounds good to me from an Oregon defensive perspective.
Yes,
that they're just
100%.
that they're killing it.
It just means the offense is being inefficient.
Yeah, but that's still 48 points in a game. That's
True.
like, that's still pretty darn good. Like, I don't know. I'm so confused by the running clock thing. Like, my game
That's true too.
Was all about the running clock. Like, oh, it's gonna cut down on scoring. It's like, no, Oregon's just gonna score 81 points instead of program record. Like, you idiot. Yeah, like, I'm not. I don't know. I think that's a good line, Matt. I'm gonna go with the under though. I just think that's a lot of points. I don't think Hawaii is as bad as Portland State is. Granted, the spread for halftime against Portland State was, Oregon was up by 43. I think it was 50-7. So that's a big difference as well. But I think it's just going to be a little closer. I think it could be like a 30 or what is it? You said 27. Yeah, it could be like 35-10, 35-14. Like, I think it's just going to be closer than the minus 27.5 that you laid. I think Hawaii's offense is at one point during the game, they're going to click and they are going to hit a deep ball and they're going to score in like 7 to 8 seconds with the ball in the air for 5 of them.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll start diving into our game predictions and score predictions. All right, welcome back to the Autzen Audibles Podcast. Prediction time. Let's update the leaderboard here. Jared went 1-3 last week. I went 1-3 last week. Eric went 0-4 again. So the standings remain the same. The numbers are just slightly different. Jared is in first with a 4-4 record. I'm in second with a 3-5, and then Eric is at an 0-8.
I was so close last week. I just want to jump in. I had 3 of them that were so close.
Horseshoes, hand grenades, baby.
Close. I know. You're right,
Don't
Jared.
matter.
I was fired up, though, because if Bo completed 2 more passes.
The guy who almost hit a 12 parlay, a 12-leg parlay. Oh, so close. I could have been 1,000 there, man. Oh, darn.
Which has been me. I've been that guy.
I lost $20.
Yeah. No, but can I recap the misses that were close just for my own
If that
self?
makes you feel better about being 0-8.
It will make me feel a little bit better. 2 more completions from Bo Nix. I hit 1. If they had counted the sack on Mateos and not taken the penalty, that's 2. And if Tyshim Johnson, I'm so fired up, I'm forgetting names, then I would also have gotten a 3rd. So very, very close. But as Jared said, doesn't matter. I'll 0-4.
To make you feel better, Eric.
Go ahead, Matt.
All three of us are tied in the game prediction against the betting line. We're all 1-0 against the spread. And we're also 2-0 straight up.
Good. Nice.
Yeah.
That's good.
I'm nailing it.
That's one positive for Eric, yeah. Sorry. 0-8 is just impressive.
0-8.
For our dear friend Scopaldamas here.
It's the way it goes.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go into offensive team and then individual for the offense and then vice versa for the defense. I'll go first. So far this season, the Ducks have been pretty balanced with their attack. Maybe not from a yards perspective, but how they're scoring the football. They have 8 rushing touchdowns on the ground. They've thrown for 6 through the air through 2 games. I think we're going to see that balance again on Saturday against Hawaii. So I'm going at least 3 passing touchdowns and at least 4 rushing touchdowns for Oregon's offense in this game against Hawaii.
Oregon scores at least 1 touchdown.
Oh, that's easy. There you go.
Okay.
I'm gonna
That
go
would be hilarious if they lose 24.
They get shut out this game. It's not really my prediction, but I was just trying to find a way to ensure I got at least one right. Actually, I shifted this right before we started because I was going to do the old Royal Flush deal where I was quarterback, running back, wide receiver, tight end again because I just think that's really fun to root for. But
Yeah.
that's happened, as I said, twice in the last 4 years. So predicting it this week when I'm over seemed a little bit silly. So I'm going more than 500 total yards, which to me feels very attainable. They didn't do it last week against Tech, but as we acknowledge, Tech is a better team, more talent on that squad. So 500 yards. I want to get on the board. This is, I think, the easiest of the 4 that I have predicted here, in part because I just am tired of being made fun of for being 0 for on this podcast. So next week, I want to at least be 1 for. I want to at least be a 1 for next week.
I don't blame you. It's nice being in the win column. I had another team over. I had over 600 yards. I went a little more bold than Eric did with the 500. Although I think both are reachable numbers for Oregon's offense. Like for Eric just pointed out, like Oregon was I think it was 472 against Tech, so another 28 yards there would have gotten them to 500. I think again, like Matt mentioned earlier, like Hawaii's defense is not great, and they're missing their leading tackler, their middle linebacker, whose name is already slipping me. Granted,
Logan
that's
Taylor?
the second Logan Taylor. That's the second straight week that Oregon has metaphorically knocked out a starting middle linebacker out for the season. Did it last week against Tech, and now this week against Hawaii. So Colorado, you're next. I think it's just an opportunity for Oregon here to get some real yardages, and maybe not. I don't think they're going to score nearly as many as they did against Portland State, but I think they're going to rack up the yards. So over 600 total yards.
All right, individual. Troy Franklin's getting close to some records that we have to put him on watch, and I think
come on.
I think we're going to get there after this one. Over 100 yards for a third straight game. He did it for the first time for 2 games in a row last week. Darren Carrington currently has the record with 5 straight games between the 2014 and 2015 seasons. He ended his last 2 games played in 14 with over 100 yards, got suspended for the national championship game, and then missed 6 straight games to open the season, and then came out with 3 straight games of 100 yards or more. Dylan Mitchell is the last Duck to go 3 in a row, and he did it twice during the 2018 season. So I think Troy Franklin over 100 yards becomes the first Duck to hit 3 or more in a row since Dylan Mitchell, and then we can start talking about, can you get to Darren Carrington?
Carrington was such
a good Jared.
Carrington was such a good player, man. I know his career ended with a real whimper, at least at Oregon. He's one of the more gifted guys that's come through here. Yep. And he hasn't even had much of a professional career, and that speaks also to the lack of like real elite talent Oregon has had at the position. I like the Troy Franklin pick. I predicted before the season he was going to break several of the single season receiving records, and so far that Scopeldamus prediction is looking better than a lot of these weekly predictions because he's off to an awesome start. I've got Bo Nix with 3 touchdowns through the air and 1 rushing.
Ooh.
I'm not thinking it's a long run, but I think maybe we get it at the goal line and he says, I'm just going to call the old number and punch it in. He scored 14 rushing touchdowns a year ago. And I think I did the math in the offseason. I want to say 10 of those 14 came within inside the 5-yard line. I don't anticipate he's running much at all this week. I don't think he'll need to. I don't think they'll call designed runs. And I don't think on scrambles he will put himself in a position to take contact. So I think we're going to see more sliding if we see that, if he needs to. But they get the ball near the goal line. I wouldn't be surprised to see him just sneak one in there and punch it in. So give me 3 through the air, 1 on the ground for Mr. Nix.
I like it. I'd like to see Nix get it on the ground as well, just for maybe some of the concerns that people have in terms of his rushing attack in the first 2 weeks.
Yep.
I originally had a Troy Franklin pick. I'm going to swap it at the last minute. I'm going to go Terrence Ferguson here. Little wild card on the offense. I have him at over 4.5 receptions, over 55.5 yards, and over a half touchdown. So that line that would get me a win would be 5 receptions, 55.6 yards, and 0.6 touchdowns. So, Terrence, if you could just get 3/4 of a touchdown, that'd be sweet. Yeah, no, I think that the tight ends have been a little underused so far in Oregon's offense outside of blocking. I think Patrick Herbert had a great game against Tech. I think Terrence Ferguson has really shown an ability to create chunk plays with his legs, which I didn't really think that he could. But he's shown, honestly, like great nimbleness around the sideline, great, like good speed for a guy his size, great athleticism. So I think this could be a day where if Hawaii does try to focus on shutting down a Troy Franklin or a Gary Bryant or a Tez Johnson, like there could be opportunities for one of the tight ends. I personally am just hoping it's Terrence Ferguson to do well in this game. So give me Ferg, all of those overs that I just listed.
Oof. It's going to be hard to hit. You made it harder on yourself on that one. But I like the call because the tight ends, like I agree with you. They've been pretty quiet outside of like a catch or two per game. Haven't really been used a lot. All right, defensive team prediction. Week 1, Oregon went without a sack against Portland State, and then against Texas Tech, they showed up and picked up 4. I think they hit 4.5 or more sacks in this football game. Hawaii is absolutely atrocious at protecting the quarterback. They're dead last in sacks allowed, which, mind you, they're averaging 4.67 sacks per game. So I'm banking on the fact that Hawaii is as bad as they have been through their first 3 games, and then we see a full assault by Oregon's defensive line and front 7 and wherever they simulate pressure from to get to the quarterback and create 4.5 or more sacks in this football game.
How are they getting to 4.5? Isn't it like 5 or more?
It's 5. It's 5.
Yeah.
I'm just saying they're hitting 4.5.
Okay. I was going to say, because like a player could have a half sack, but
yes,
a play can't result in a half sack.
Yes.
That would be an interesting play. I don't know how that would be ruled. No, I like that one. I was going to go in that same direction. But I actually thought I was making it maybe more difficult for myself because I guess I'm just a sadist. But I have Hawaii running for less than 50 yards. They, against Power 5 competition, have just not been able to run the ball, period. Sacks, by the way, in college football do count to the run total. I'm including that in this. That is why against Stanford, they finished negative. I just don't expect Hawaii to have a lot of success running. And honestly, because of the game script, because of how I anticipate this goes, I think they're going to throw the ball a lot. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 10 to 12 rushes the whole game for Hawaii. And I don't think those are going to go very far. So 50 yards or fewer on the ground for the Rainbow Warriors.
It's a good pick. I like that. Like for reference, Hawaii had 16 total rush attempts for -5 yards against Stanford. So I could see it maybe not playing out to that degree against Oregon, but it's a good idea. It's a good focus point. For me, I went with tackles for loss. So not sacks, but tackles for loss. I had over 6.5. Oregon got 5 against Hawaii. My thought process on this is exactly like Matt's. This is a poor offensive line. This is an opportunity for people to get some tackles behind the line. And this could be 7 sacks. It could be 3 sacks and 5 tackles for loss from somebody. But kind of goes to Eric's point where this is a poor rushing team. I watched that Hawaii Stanford game because I had nothing better to do, unfortunately. And David Bailey at Stanford, who's a good prospect, just ate. He just absolutely devoured Hawaii's offensive line on run plays, on pass plays. Like, there's no reason why somebody like a Jeffrey Bassa or Tysheem Johnson or even Evan Williams, if he wants to come down the box, like can't do the exact same thing. So over 6.5 tackles for loss for me.
Do we realize how bad, statistically speaking, Oregon's run defense is? This might be a get yourself right. Averages kind of go back to where you would hope to be. They're 103rd in rushing yards allowed per game at 161 yards right now. That kind of surprised me. I know that's a very, very easy, very simple.
161 isn't even like terrible. Like there were like I don't know, there were Pac-12 teams last year that were like allowing over 200 yards per game. So
Colorado averages 242 yards rushing per game right now. Worst in the conference. Yes, worst in the conference.
Good Lord. Yeah.
Oregon, quick look, Oregon is 11th in the conference. But it's only 2 games in, and 69 attempts against Oregon's defense. Yards per carry, they're still pretty bad. They're averaging, where is it? Where'd they go? 4.67 yards per carry, which is 110th in the country.
Hasn't been up to standard. This week will help the odds. And I mean, the thing I would just note for people who get too alarmist, like the running defense hasn't been as good as expected. 2 games in, that sort of a sample size can really be skewed.
Yes.
I know Oregon's played an FCS team in that range, but like if you played an FCS team like Stanford's defense going against Hawaii with a -5 yards, that doesn't tell me Stanford's defense is good against the run as much as it tells me that they played a team who doesn't run the football and then abandon running the football because it didn't work. So, but Correct. You're right. It needs to get better. 164. Last year they averaged about 128, I think, per game, which was inflated by the Oregon State game because before that I think it was like 110, 115. I think you'll see them get closer to those numbers once you get into conference play, in part because I just think a lot of these offenses are just going to throw the ball all the time.
Yeah. All right. Individual defense. I went back and looked at some of the box scores for Hawaii, and it's been pretty typical that safety or a linebacker has led the team that has played Hawaii and tackles. And so I'm not going to steal the Tysheem Johnson one from one of you guys, but I am going to go Jeffrey Bassa leads Oregon in tackles. I did go back and look, and against Portland State, he led all starters in tackles. He didn't lead the team in tackles. That was Connor Soley who did that, but Bassa got pulled pretty early in the game. And then against Tech, he obviously did lead the team in tackles. So I'm going with the idea that Bassa is going to play more snaps against Hawaii than he did against Portland State, and it'll be more in line with what he did versus Tech. So don't have a number. It's just Jeffrey Bassa leads the team in tackles.
It's a week too late because Mateo did sack the quarterback at Texas Tech, and it should have counted towards my 5. Yes. So I shouldn't be 0-for. But this week, Mateo is rightfully credited with his first career sack. Jared, are you looking at me because you had something similar, or are you just frustrated that I keep bringing up the fact that I should have gotten 5 sacks last week?
Someone's gonna hit the YouTube comments and say that you're whining because sounds like you keep bringing it up that it almost happened.
It actually did happen, and then they decided. Dan was like, I don't like Scopodamus. I don't want him to get any of these right, so I'm gonna take the penalty. It was the right call in terms of the game plan for those. I'm not questioning that part. I understand it was the right choice, but I think Mateo has proven on numerous downs he's capable of getting home. He's finished one they didn't count, but then he also had a couple last week against Tech where he got there and forced Shuck out of the pocket. I think Shuck scrambled and avoided one time. There was another where actually I just saw. On social, Jared posted something from that 2-point conversion, and then Mateo's his pops, Big Dave, posted an angle that showed very clearly that Mateo was held charging upfield where he wouldn't have counted towards a sack, but at least showed he can get home. So I think you've seen through a couple of games here now the talent is undeniable.
He's really good,
and it's going to happen soon.
He's going
to get a sack, and I just think this is a good opportunity to get there with especially how much they throw the football.
Yeah, this is probably as good as opportunity as any for Mateo or anybody else who doesn't have a sack on the defensive line to get in there and get a chance. Let's see. For my defensive individual, I have Kyrie Jackson. I'm going to keep it secondary heavy on this podcast just because that's what I anticipate the game to go like. It would be weird if Hawaii came out and ran the ball 45 times. But I got Kyrie Jackson with over 5.5 tackles and over half an interception. So I'm expecting Kyrie Jackson to go back-to-back games with an interception.
I like it.
There's just going to be opportunities. I don't know if he's going to get an interception, but how often has he and Jaleel Florence surprisingly play during a game? Like he's going to get out there for a lot of opportunities. And I just think that one of them is going to be a poorly thrown ball, or one of them is going to be good coverage. And maybe this time around he doesn't decapitate somebody in the middle of the field just for fun. and picks up the ball and catches it for an interception. But I think he's just going to be around the ball a lot. So I think the 5.5 tackles should be pretty easy for him to hit. I think he had 5 tackles against Texas Tech. I unfortunately took down my my stat sheet that was in front of me on the computer here, but I think he had 5 tackles against Texas Tech. So I just need one more, Kyrie, one more.
I like it. All right, game predictions. 38.5 is the official line as of this recording. I think Oregon covers that. It's going to be close, though. I think what happens in the fourth quarter will dictate if the offense is as successful, if the defense is as successful as they were against Portland State, then they'll cover. But that's what's going to decide this. Oregon will go into the fourth quarter, or when the starters get pulled, whenever it happens, they will have covered the spread. I just don't think Hawaii has the horses to compete here. They will test Oregon vertically. They will rip off a long touchdown play on a broken play or something. They'll have some success, but it's going to be very minimal. I think Oregon's got the better player at every position. They've got the better depth at every position. And it's a home game. It's going to be it's a 5 o'clock kickoff. Austin's going to be amped up. I just think Hawaii is just. I like the logos. I like their mascot and all that, but they're just not going to be able to compete with Oregon. So I go Oregon 59, Hawaii 14 in this one. Oregon covers the spread and improves to 3-0 on the season.
We are very close on this one, Matt. Once again, I'm trying to pull this up because I want to make sure I get this right. I think Hawaii has won the last couple in the series. I can't remember if it's 2 or
4
3 games.
Or three. Sorry.
Yeah, they've won the last 3 in the series. Of course, they haven't played. These teams haven't played in 20 years, and that's sort of important to acknowledge. Last time they played was in '94, which means that they would have won in the year of the pick. So that's sort of significant. Similar to you, Matt, I think Oregon wins by a lot. I have 59-17. So almost identical scores. We almost
very close.
Again. Yeah, I actually was worried as you were saying your score that we had done that thing again, but I'm giving Hawaii credit for one more field goal. I'm including in my prediction, not that this is going to be involved in it, but Solo Vaipolu, Matt's favorite player on the Hawaii roster.
Yes.
Number 0, a 6'2", 280-pound offensive lineman converted running back. I think he's going to score one of the 2 touchdowns just because that's that's a more fun outcome than just about anything else, is seeing a 280-pound man celebrate in an end zone. So to add a little bit more fun, let's do that. So 59-17 with 7 of those coming from Mr. Vaipolu.
By the way, he has 43 career starts along the offensive line, and now he doesn't start for some reason because he plays backup running back, which they don't ever run the football. Super weird.
He wanted
he's
to be
he's a weapon.
Yeah, he wanted that football. He was tired of blocking from people. He's like, I want that ball.
Good for him becoming a full-on running back. I have Oregon 56-24. So I got one more touchdown for Hawaii here than you guys. Similar score for Oregon. I originally had 49 points for Oregon, but I kind of thought about it, and I just think that they're going to score the ball pretty easily. I expect the backups to be in probably for the fourth quarter. And I expect Hawaii to score a garbage time touchdown, which does not cover the spread, which I looked before the podcast is minus 37.5 for Oregon. So it's gone down by a half point. I don't expect them to cover, or at least I'm not predicting them to cover. If they do, huzzah. If they don't, I'm right. So either way, I think it's a good thing here. I just think that Oregon's offense is going to dominate. I have no questions about them really going against this Hawaii defense. I think it'll be a good kind of tune-up game. I think Will Stein will probably keep the playbook pretty vanilla. Probably doesn't want to show too much against Hawaii, probably because he doesn't have to. Probably a lot of counters from Oregon's offense, just like they have done for the last 2 years under Dillingham and now under Stein. Hopefully I see Nix take a couple more deep shots, just kind of get his arm going. Hasn't done a lot through the first 2 games of the season, but those are all the hopes and dreams I have for this game. I just think that Oregon's pass defense eventually will get to Hawaii, but I think Hawaii's they're going to hit a home run. They're going to hit a 30, 40, 50-yard touchdown at one point. It's just going to happen. It is not the end of the world unless it happens on 4 straight plays, then there's a huge gaping problem in Oregon's defense. But I think that Hawaii will score a late touchdown, so it'll be 56-17 to 56-24, and that's how the game will end.
Bonus pick here for you guys. This will not count for standings or anything. Over under 4.5 passes thrown by Ty Thompson.
That's a good line.
I'll go under. I'll go 3.
It probably should be under, huh? I mean, I'm just thinking here of, unless this is way uglier than we're predicting, he's not getting into the game until probably late
fourth quarter.
Late third, early fourth is probably the earliest you'd see him. Again, unless this is like literally 49-0 or something. Yeah, I'll take the under too.
I will be different, and I'll take the over. I think we see him in the full fourth quarter.
Okay.
And that'll open the door for him to throw a couple times.
And how will he do, Matt? Because historically, I did this stat. Against FCS teams, he's been all-world. Against FBS teams, he's been not all-world.
I think he, from a pure statistical standpoint, will be slightly worse than what he did against Portland State. Now, slightly worse, he was like, 7 for 8 against Portland State. So I'm talking something like maybe 5 for 9 or 5 for 8 in that regard. Maybe he throws for 50 yards, but I don't know if he throws a touchdown.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what I'm expecting. All right, that's going to do it for us here on the Autzen Audibles podcast. Thank you for listening to the show. Enjoy the game this weekend, 5 p.m. kickoff, 5:12 p.m. kickoff on the Pac-12 Networks from Autzen Stadium. All 3 of us will be there. We'll have live coverage, pregame, in-game, and then postgame. And the next time you'll hear us is post-game edition of the Autzen Audibles podcast. And until then, you've been listening to the Autzen Audibles podcast.
Talk to you later, folks.
Peace.